now I got so many windows open. If I move our flag back over to Phandalin, because that's where you were, right? You ended in Phandalin, and your two new friends.
That's where I'm recuperating after my bone,
after grabbing a gem. Yeah, I gotta say, like, not the best starting adventure.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, that was kind of a shock. That one in particular, like, there's some weird design. Like, hey, let's make it really hard to get into the final chamber, and all that's there is a bomb.
I don't know that these adventures work well for the solo player.
Yeah,
those rules seem like a little tacked on for the product.
I wonder if they. I mean, well, they so clearly the writing included those options. So they, in many of the adventures, they have a scaling. They describe the scaling for how many PCs, including companion characters.
Sure.
So it wasn't completely tacked on, but maybe it was in a post edit or something like that.
I don't know if the adventures were designed with that in mind.
Yeah.
Like, I would have included a specific adventure or two made just for solo players.
I gotcha. Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's what didn't they do that with the Red Box Afori? Didn't they have like a choose your own? That was actually a pure like choose your own adventure style solo.
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
Like, I would specifically call out and say, look, and one feature we're highlighting is solo play, and this adventure is made specifically for solo play, so you could check out what solo play should look like on D&D.
Right.
Like, something like that.
Yeah. I do find it, well, and yeah, I find the concept, we were talking about this on Twitter today, I find the concept of one-on-one play, when you think about how much more range this game can have, when you can have any number of players, like 1 to 6, or some people even have more. That's a lot better than needing 4 of your friends to get together before you can play D&D.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So trying to figure, and I'm trying to figure out, I liked your idea about environmental, like how do you fight Tiamat? Like I'm picking the hardest case, right? Of like, what would a solo fight against Tiamat look like, and how would you do that? And Michelle, Michelle and I were talking about on our walk today, and she had a good idea of like, Tiamat is all warmed up before you get there. So you're not there fighting her from scratch. You're there to help do the finishing blow. She's already been, she just kills her 4th archmage by the time you arrive. She's down to 200 hit points, and 2 of her heads are lolling off to the side, and you've got your potion of resistance, your potion of dragon breath resistance, so you're not going to get killed in one blast.
Yeah, that's a good that's certainly a good way to approach it. And then I think you as a DM have to design the environment with solo play in mind, right? So like to give players the player, the woman, whoever's playing, the player, to give the players something to do in the environment.
Yeah.
Like to be able to use, so there's these pillars that you could maybe try to push out of the way that will bring down half the ceiling on
the
team.
That's what, if you think about like the Crystal Shard, the R.A. Salvador novel, Drizzt and Wolfgar and Guinevere fight Icing Death, a white dragon, probably the equivalent of a young white dragon. And they fight that with just the 3 of them. And I remember reading it and I was like, you can't do this in D&D, right? Like, it's a D&D book, but this battle never happens. And they end up dropping a icicle on top of him. And I think they kill, like Wolfgar throws a hammer and smashes down this massive, 50-ton icicle that impales the dragon and kills him. And so, yeah, like an environmental effect like that, could really work. So,
yeah, I think like that's kind of cool,
Yeah, in the Tiamat one, like she's struggling to tear herself free from this portal. If you can close the portal while she's in it, you can break the 5th ward and it closes the portal and severs her in half. Like, that would be pretty badass.
And maybe even like, and maybe even like, and this you would have to get into like actual design stuff,
right.
That I'm not too crazy about, but maybe you can come up with new actions for solo players.
Right.
Or there's new things that a solo player could do. I don't know what those things are, but maybe there's different tricks for solo PCs rather than PCs were in a group.
Right.
Yeah,
and then I thinking about another. We were thinking about another Drizzt book. I remember Ari Salvador talked about one of the more recent Drizzt books, and he said that they said like, hey, we want you to write another book about Drizzt. It has to be in the Underdark, and we have one requirement, and that's Drizzt has to fight Demogorgon. And Ari Salvador is like, Demogorgon's like 40 feet tall. Like, sure, Drizzt is really fast, and those scimitars are great, but they're scimitars. It's like a mouse fighting you with a pair of needles. Like, what are you going to do? And in the book, he has like all of the high priestesses of Menzoberranzan channel like the full rage of Loth into him. And then he, essentially unzippers, Demogorgon with one of his scimitars, right? He just pours all of his energy into it and finishes him off.
Nice.
So yeah, so you could, you could have sort of the story equivalent of that. I remember it was I think a Gen Con, like the first full year after D&D had been out, we went to Gen Con, and there was these two young women who joined our game. They were young teens, 12 or 13 years old. It was the first time that we saw two young women show up at the table full of a bunch of graybeards. And they said like, have you guys played before? And they're like, yeah, I ran all of Rise of Tiamat for her. Right. And they were already doing solo play together, like in year one. So I'm like, I bet you a lot of people have been trying to do this. And now there's sort of an officially kind of rules between the companion characters that are inside Essentials, which go all the way, if you have the 3 adventures on D&D Beyond, they go all the way up to 12, I think.
Yeah.
But you can also use the companion rules, the UA rules, to go all the way to 20, to make any companion character up to 20. So the mechanics are there. And my thought is like, I'm contemplating an article, right? I want to write an article about this and say like, here are the tools that a DM can keep on hand to run a solo game, maybe even up to 20th. And these are the things you need to keep in mind. And I think the idea of like, you're going to have to tune the environment to help them out, make the environment an ally of the character, I think is a good, that's a good one.
I think there's a big design space here for solo adventures beyond what they provided with these companion characters.
Right.
And I think there's a hunger for it too. I think there's a hunger for this type of
yeah. Product. I mean, if you look at the DMs Guild, one of the best-selling products that's been there for probably more than a year at this point, are the solo games. There's a series of them. I played them. It started with Death Knight Squire. This is by I think it's a 5e solo game books. I forget the name of the guy who wrote it. Damn, he and I talked. Ugh. And he's got a whole series of these. But yeah, they're like Mithril bestsellers. And I ran one and it was fun. Like I played it on my phone. I'll tell you Design Space. Whoa, your window got small. Why'd your window get small?
I don't know.
I don't know either. Your window. This happened when I was doing it before. For some reason, people's windows shrunk on me. I don't know if it's a Skype thing.
Last night when I put out that tweet about solo adventures, a lot of people reacted to it because I think there's a big appetite for.
I did too with my jerk ass reply. Sorry about that.
That's all right. But you're right though. I come up with these ideas, but then I don't execute it. I suck. I'm a big phony.
You're not a big phony. You got reviews, man. People love your reviews. You're a stalwart member of the community. Don't say anything otherwise.
I got that.
Yeah, I agree with you. Like those old second edition adventures. Did we talk about those? There's like those
the Fighters Challenge. And someone brought him up. I think it was Grant who brought him up.
Yeah. And Grant is in chat. Hey, Grant. Hello. He can't reply, can he? He can reply in chat. He's here for Enrique's review of the special edition covers. Do you have the special edition? Did you get that one?
I did not.
The Tyranny one?
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I did get those.
Yeah, it's cool.
I thought you meant the core rule books. I didn't get those.
Oh, yeah.
No.
I did, and that's why everybody, when I was, going on my rant about the most recent UA, where like half of the replies I got back were, well, they'll just be a new player's handbook. And I'm like, I just bought the special edition ones. Like, I buy everything D&D, and I do not want to buy another player's handbook. Right? I've got like 4. I've got 4 copies of the original player's handbook here. So, yeah, no.
Look at the I am the vitamin says he ran. Wait, that's not the vitamin. I am the 3-bit. Okay. Well, he ran. They ran
Fighters Challenge. I bet that works really well. I haven't looked at them.
I'm gonna look those up.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a conversion there for.
Yeah, I think the format. If you want to, like, I'm always kind of interested because I figure that like nobody is thinking as deeply about what adventures should look like than the people that are at Wizards of the Coast, right? Like, it's their full-time job. They have like a whole bunch of people. They sit around in meetings talking about what adventure should look like. So all of us who are kind of hanging out, doing it on our own, like, we all have ideas, but you think about that, like that giant, sort of brain meld of all of these people thinking about it. And so I like to look at what designs they're choosing for things. And the designs of the adventures in the Essentials kit, I think, is interesting. And I think it could lend itself to that, right? That, like, they're 2 pages in many circumstances. A lot of these adventures, I mean, the one we ran was a little longer. Let me pull it out here, but I was looking at the actual book. See, I got the Essentials kit right here. And, yeah, so a couple are like 2 pages long, right? But like, I think this Loggers Camp, the Loggers Camp is 2 pages, right? Front and back. Mountains Toe Gold Mine, Shrine of Savras, Tower Storms, I think. No, Tower Storms is only 3 pages. So they've designed these really, really small adventures that are probably 2 hours long, right? I mean, it'd probably take 2 hours to run any one of these.
Yeah, and I think...
So I think that there's... Sorry, go ahead.
I love the product.
Yeah. So I think that there... Yeah, I'm sorry. So the Dwarven Excavation, the one I ran you through, is only 2 pages. Right? It's the whole spread. Yeah. So the idea of like being able to write solo adventures that are tuned for particular characters that are 2 pages long, I think... Using the model that they've put out here, what's here, the location, I think there's room for, 2-page adventures that are designed for one character, maybe 2, right? You'd have some flexibility if you said it's 1 character plus a companion or 2 characters. And that way, if you have 2 players, you're not saying like you can only run this adventure with, you have to have only 2. You have to have only a DM and 1 player. I think having some flexibility would be interesting. So, yeah, I think.
Now I look at some other adventures, like I look at the Descent into Avernus book, for example.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine ever running that with one PC.
But isn't it a neat challenge though? Like, that feels like I would love, I feel the same way about Tyranny of Dragons. Like, you're facing Tiamat with 1 character. Like, what's that going to be like? You fight a dragon at like level 8. So
I think at some point I think at some point it'd be silly. Like, hey, we're down here at this dungeon, and there's only 2 cultists hanging around. The entire place.
Yeah.
Because the moment you start scaling things down to 1 player and a companion, it bemes kind of dumb. Right?
Yeah. Same with like the bandit. I mean, even that early on in Tyranny of Dragons. Well, so I think you'd have to have like a, and I think that this is what I'm thinking about as far as like running those hardback adventures is like, I want to develop like 6 rules of thumb that a DM can keep in their head, like these 6 tools that they keep in their head that they can implement in order to take an adventure that's meant for 4 to 5 and scale it to 1 to 2, essentially 1 and a companion. And if and some of them can be like when you're, if you can see that there's going to be an overwhelming amount of creatures, then, figure out how some of those are off screen, right? That like, and make sure that there's like a nice path for the character to only be dealing with the 2. I mean, if you think about it, it's actually not any less ridiculous than the idea that you're in hell with 4 characters and you only face 6 cultists, right? Like, we still chose this sort of arbitrary number of cultists. It's rare It does happen, and I love to run it. But it's rare when you get into a room and there's 30 cultists, right? And you're like, oh man. And most of it is because the mechanics of 5e aren't designed to run 30 cultists real well.
So you approach this bandit camp. You see tents and you see sleeping bags.
Right.
There's only one cultist here. The other 4 are out logging.
Right.
What do you do?
Yeah. I mean,
there's only one bandit. There's one bandit, and the other 5 bandits are out hunting.
There's 2, right? Everyone's sleeping. Well, so the idea is like, if you go to the bandit camp and you go there with your group of 5 characters, and there's like 8 bandits that are all, doing a they're doing a talent show, right? At night, they do their bandit talent show, and and they're all awake and lively and half drunk, but their swords are nearby. And then you get a fight with them. You fight all 8 bandits. The alternative situation is you're only going with your one, and it's like, well, there's the bandit talent show is going on, and it's off to the side. But here's these 2 bandits that you think might see you. You're gonna have to kill them before the talent show finishes, right? So I don't know. Yeah, I think that changing that. Yeah, I agree with you that like the ridiculousness of that situation. But I've seen that ridiculousness. Actually, if you think about it, it sort of exists all over, because every D&D is built for these like these 20-foot dungeon rooms that only have 6 ghouls in it at any given time, right? Instead of the pit that's got 300 ghouls. Hello, kitty.
And there's not a lot to support the pit with 300 ghouls.
Yeah, like I've got my new head tricks for running 300 ghouls.
Like, you ever wonder, like, if characters in D&D broke the 4th wall and were like, you guys ever wonder why every time
how come everything's perfect?
Enemies?
Yeah, there's a whole series of novels about this called what do they call it? RPG lit RPG. Are you familiar with this? This whole new genre?
No, I'm not familiar with it.
Yeah, so there's a genre of novels now called, I think it's either, and somebody in chat will help me out here. It's lit RPG or RPG lit, and it's novels that are self-aware. I think they're generally self-aware MMOs. So it's about characters in world that know that they're actually in world. And
that's great.
Yeah, there's a bunch of these. There's a few of them, and they're popular among the independent publisher groups. Like if you go, a lot of people that are publishing like Kindle books these days are self-publishing RPG lit books. I can only take them to a point. Sometimes they go overboard with the lead speak, and I'm like, I really don't need to read lead. I'll just read fantasy. Like, I'm good with straight fantasy novels. There's one book that I read recently called King of the Wild, WYLD. And King of the Wild is an almost self-aware. I'm looking up the author. I can't type. Nicholas Ames, Eames, and it's a fantasy novel that is about like a group of adventurers after they've retired and they're going. Late Night Dungeon says it's lit RPG is the genre. This one, like, it's clearly like a D&D world, and it's like there's all of these D&D tropes, and then it sort of turns all of them counterclockwise 90 degrees to just make them interesting and weird. But they're self-aware about the fact that they are these like adventuring bands, and there's lots of adventuring bands, and they've already killed all the monsters that are worth killing, so now it's just going to arenas and fighting because that's all that's left. It's a pretty great. My wife and I are both reading it, and we like it a lot.
That's fun.
It's a good time. Yeah.
All right, dude. I think
time to go.
This chat was good enough. This chatting up was good enough to clip off and put on YouTube.
Yeah, I'll do that. I can put it on YouTube. Probably some interesting early morning coffee with Enrique and Mike.
Minus the coffee, because I don't have coffee.
You don't have coffee. That's too bad.
My wife went out of town. I had to go drop off the kids at school at 7. I don't get up this early. I'm dying.
Yeah. Excellent. Oh, my cat.
So
tonight's perch.
Tonight's game is at what time? 8 o'clock?
8 o'clock. If you can you do 8?
Yeah, I can do 8.
Awesome. 8 o'clock. 8 to 10 tonight. Our Barundar goes after, does not take his latest wounding too seriously and goes back out there seeking adventure.
Barundar has been my D&D character ever since I started playing D&D.
Really? And yet he's still only level 2.
He's been a fighter, he's been a barbarian, but he's always a dwarf.
He's got a lot of career.
He's been around the block and back.
Excellent. Yeah, we'll do it. And looks like we got everything set up.
All right, great.
Awesome.
So I'll see you then.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm sleepy. I'm tired. I'm stretching on camera. I'm behaving.
No one cares. They're just looking at the cat. They're just like, hey, look, the kitty.
All right, Mike.
All right. Talk to you later, my friend.
I'll see you tonight.
Bye-bye.
And bye, everybody in chat.
Bye. Thank you for helping us test our stuff out. Really helpful.